All right. Good morning again, everyone. Welcome to the first in the September series of GFA's WaterFirst webinars. My name is Stacey Isaac Barraza. I'll be helping moderate this morning. So yeah, I want to thank you for joining us. We want to make this pretty interactive. So today we will focus on planning. And we have a few more webinars coming up the rest of this month that will remind you of the dates later. But thanks for joining. If we move to the next slide here, we'll get to some webinar logistics, right? So by now, we are probably all, a lot of us are using many different webinar platforms. You have a control panel on your screen that looks like the one in this image. If you click on the little red arrow, it will expand your control panel or minimize it. So you can toggle back and forth between that. You can mute, you can see the mute button there to see if your mic is on or not. And yeah, there are different features there, but we want to use a couple features that would make this webinar really interactive as possible. So one is the raise your hand feature. So hopefully you can find that as participants. And why don't you go ahead and raise your hand if you can hear me? So that hopefully is everybody. So everybody should be raising their hands right now. In case our speakers this morning want to use this feature, we just want to practice. So we see lots of hands up there. Great. All right, so we'll ask Ben to put everybody's hands down. Thanks for practicing with that. Now you can raise your hand if you have an issue during the webinar, but we encourage you to actually submit questions, etc., through the chat function. So if you look there on the lower sort of bar in the logistics slide that we're looking at, you'll see you have the option to send chat messages. So you may have to click the little triangle to expand that part of your control box. I would encourage you to send questions as chats to the organizers, and we'll try to queue those up for the speakers, okay? So again, make this interactive, get what you want out of this webinar today by sending questions. Send those to the organizers and we will organize them so that the speakers have a chance to address your questions. Again, trying to make it interactive, let's use a little bit of information about yourself. So we'll do the introductions this way. We have probably too many people on the webinar to do individual, sort of turn your video on and do an introduction, but we can do it through the chat. So in this case, you'll send the chat to the whole audience, meaning everybody. Please put in your name, your organization, and your favorite water body. So this webinar is about water. The whole series is about water. So your name, your organization, and your favorite water body. And this is, again, to make this interactive, but also maybe you'll want to contact each other afterwards to ask questions, etc. So you want to see who's on here, make sure everybody's able to use the features, etc.
All right, great. Thank you, Stacey, for kicking us off today. My name is Ansley Jones, and I'm one of the co-coordinators of the GFA WaterFirst program, along with Oshabar Hardman, who you'll hear from in a few minutes. Wanted to give y'all an overview of our agenda for today. So as you just heard, we did a little intro to GoToWebinar. So many platforms out there that we're all getting used to these days. So I hope everybody has had a chance to kind of play around with that control panel and understand how to engage with us, because we really want this to be an interactive experience. So next up, Oshabar and I will be giving just a brief overview of what WaterFirst is in general, and then we'll be diving into our speaker presentations. We've got Marilyn Hall with Athens-Clarke County up first, and then Chris Boyd with City of Roswell. to their experience of becoming a WaterFirst community. And also throughout their presentations, be prepared. We've included some poll questions, so that's another way that we're trying to make this an interactive experience. And then after the two presentations, we'll have a question and answer session that Stacy will, field to the speakers any questions that came in throughout the webinar. So we encourage you to continue using that question box anytime a question occurs to you. And then at the very end, when we wrap up, we do want you to please take note that there will be a survey that comes up when you're exiting the webinar, and we'd very much appreciate if you could fill that out. So let's dive in. What is WaterFirst? WaterFirst is a local government designation for communities that have demonstrated environmental excellence. It's for those communities that have recognized that water resources extend beyond political boundaries. So they've worked with other local partners, both governmental and non-governmental, as well as state partners, to work on quality of life improvements and the wise management and protection of water resources. The overarching goal of WaterFirst is to encourage Georgia communities to proactively plan so that future generations can see the result of the environmental and economic investments being put into place today. So just to give you a brief overview of what it takes to become a WaterFirst community, our application window is actually a rolling application. So communities can come to GIFA at any time and talk to us about how to fill out the application. But we have all of the materials linked on the GIFA website. And what you'll find is there's a Word document for the application, as well as a checklist spreadsheet. There's a screenshot of the checklist provided here that shows you just a short section of the checklist. It's a pretty comprehensive list because it covers 9 criteria, and under each criteria there are several checklist items that WaterFirst communities are expected to be doing. So once you have completed the checklist, which that will be the most time-consuming piece of this, because you're probably going to have to work with several different departments within your local government and outside partners to complete this. You would send it on to GIFA, and we will review your materials as well as a review committee. Then the review committee determines whether your community has met the minimum to be in a threshold that determines that you're accepted into the WaterFirst class. So the WaterFirst class means that GIFA will work with you, provide technical assistance to get you to the next step, which is the on-site review. Now, just to give you a sense of how long this could take, some communities remain in the WaterFirst class for years, whereas others can complete the process in just a few months. But what you're gearing up for is this on-site review, where you invite a team of peer reviewers, that is existing designated WaterFirst communities, out to your community, and you go over all of your WaterFirst checklist in depth. So it's a lengthy presentation, as well as a tour of somewhere interesting in your community. And then the peer reviewers will evaluate and determine whether you've met the next threshold for becoming a WaterFirst community. So now I'll pass it off to Oshabar, who will give you a few more details.
Thanks, Ansley. So as Ansley was speaking on the WaterFirst checklist, there are 9 criteria that makes up the WaterFirst checklist, and this criteria is broken down into these components. The first is the watershed assessment. Then you have the water conservation, water reclamation and reuse, stormwater master planning, water supply protection, education outreach, wastewater treatment and management, water supply planning, and regional water planning. And all of these criteria are actually on the checklist, as Ansley stated previously. And they're broken down so that each community, when they're going through their checklist, they can go through each criteria to determine what areas in which they are proficient in and write down any information that they need to add on the checklist that would be beneficial for the reviewers when they do the checklist, so that they can see exactly what the community is doing within these 9 components of WaterFirst. So this is, something that when we get an opportunity to review, we have that chance to see what the communities are doing with WaterFirst. Next slide. So this is one of the big aspects of WaterFirst, is the incentives on why communities want to be WaterFirst. The first incentive is 1% interest reduction for GFA water-related loans. So anytime you are designated as a WaterFirst community, when you apply for a loan from GFA, you would get a 1% interest rate reduction, which is a huge cost saving for the community. And the second thing is an annual eligibility of DCA community block grant development grants for water-related projects. So that's also a wonderful incentive with DCA. And then also you have priority from the EPD 319 grant funding. Other benefits are the state recognition, including road signage and authorization to use the WaterFirst logo. I'll give an example. In Hall County, we normally give 2 signs to the community so that they can have, but they ordered, I think it was 20 more signs on all of their entryways into Hall County, and to make sure that every person that's coming into the county knew that the county was WaterFirst designated. So also free attendance to any of the WaterFirst workshops is the final benefit. And so what we try to do is we will continue to have workshops that are going on or other activities that we give interest to for all of the WaterFirst designees. And then also some of the things that they can partner with us is in the review, and also being presenters like Athens, Clark County, and Roswell are doing today. Next slide. Current WaterFirst designees, since 2003, we are somewhere, I think, around 34 communities that have been designated as WaterFirst communities. And these are communities that you see on your designated in the years that they've been designated. In specific, since in 2012, Newton County, you can apply as an individual city or county or water authority, or you can also do it as multiple municipalities together, as in Newton County. They came together with all of their municipalities, excluding Social Circle, and they came together to apply as a WaterFirst designee, and they were able to receive it in 2000. This is the area where all of the current WaterFirst designees are. As you can see, we still have a lot of work to do. Northeast Georgia seems to be fully represented, and then you have some that is down in southeast Georgia. And so we still have a lot of publicity to try to get the word out about WaterFirst to as many people as possible. And we do still have some that are in the class, so hopefully we can fill in the area in Middle Georgia a little more and some other areas. So we want to make sure that we get this information out to as many people as possible, so that as many communities can receive the benefits of becoming a WaterFirst community. Next slide. And that is the brief introduction into the WaterFirst program. As Ansley said earlier, herself and I, we are the WaterFirst program managers, coordinators, whatever you want to call it. But we're trying to work diligently to work with as many communities as possible to get them to understand what the WaterFirst program is and how they can become a part of the WaterFirst designees. I'll turn it back over to Ansley.
Yes, and I'll pass it back to Stacy to introduce our first speaker for today.
Great. Thank you, guys. So for our audience and participants today, you got to meet Ansley and Oshabara, and they're the ones who help you if you have any questions about this program in general. Just quickly, we did have one question that I've not been able to do a webinar without having, right? Which is it available later? So would the recording be available? And I think the answer is probably yes. We are recording this morning, and we'll share that afterwards. So now I'll introduce our first speaker this morning, Marilyn Hall. She is a water and sustainability professional, economist, and city planner. Since 2009, Marilyn has served as a water resources planner for Athens-Clarke County. Her responsibilities include planning and implementing the city's new water reuse and storage plan, updating the watershed protection plan, managing the water loss program, long-term capital improvements planning, overseeing the Water Conservation Office, and on top of that, other special projects that may come up. So Marilyn, we will hand over to you, and we can see your camera. We can see your slides. But we do not hear you, Marilyn. Let's work on the audio there.
Can you see my slideshow?
Yes, you look good. You sound good. We can see your slides. Thanks.
Great. Thank you for the introduction. It's good to see so many people participating today. WaterFirst is a great program, and I know Athens has benefited from our participation. The purpose of my presentation is to provide you with an overview of how we do our master planning in Athens. And master planning means a lot of different things to different people, but for today, I'm going to focus on our capital improvements planning process in Athens. And my goal is to provide some useful tips that you can try out. I'm going to talk about the reasons a utility might want to do a master plan, and I'll share some helpful resources. And I'll use our plan in Athens to highlight the things that I think are important. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you a little bit about my utility. We treat and deliver about 15 million gallons of water every day to about 125,000 people. And we collect and treat about 10 million gallons of wastewater every day. And we serve all industrial, commercial customers and about 75% of our residents. We review plans and inspect all water and wastewater projects, and we conduct thousands of water quality tests every year and make sure that Athens has enough water now and into the future. And before I dive into our planning process, let's take a quick poll. What is your level of understanding of master planning? You're completely green, you have some basic knowledge, some solid background, or you're an expert? And I can't see the poll results, so Ansley, I think you're going to have to tell me what the answers are.
Yes, so far we still have some answers coming in, but we have about 40% saying they have some basic knowledge. About 29% are completely green. 29% have solid background, and then 0% have claimed to be an expert.
Well, I can't claim to be an expert either. I'm just good at some bits of it.
And just to remind the audience, you're actually clicking the right button for the response, okay, on the poll.
All right, well, good. We have people with some basic knowledge, some solid background, and some newbies. I think my presentation will probably have benefits to everybody. I sure hope so. But there are a lot of reasons to do master planning. Maybe you started an asset management program to improve facility operations and some big capital needs were identified. Or maybe you've started to notice increasing problems with sewer overflows and water main breaks. And operational challenges like this can be a signal that you need to engage in master planning. Maybe your county's government just completed a mega comprehensive plan and your utility is expected to create a plan to support somebody else's plan, that comp plan. And perhaps your customers and elected officials are demanding some improvements, so you need to develop a master plan. Or maybe you hope to manage your utility more efficiently and see benefit in pulling a wide variety of efforts into one comprehensive whole. Now, this could be especially important when it comes to figuring out how to prioritize and pay for your capital improvements. And of course, maybe there's regulatory drivers. I mean, are you ready to manage new and emerging contaminants? The bottom line here is prepare the umbrella before it rains. Master planning helps you be ready for change. I promised to share some resources with you, and this is a good one. It's free and can be downloaded from the Georgia Association of Water Professionals website. That's gawp.org. And the Master Planning Guidelines and Resource Document outlines best practices for master plan development and implementation process. It provides general information and the data needed to do a master plan, and great references and tools that can be used to support you through each step of the master planning process. And I'll share a little secret with you about utilities, that if you call me and ask for guidance or a little bit of help, some cheerleading for your master planning process, I'm happy to help you, and I'm sure other utility folks would be happy to help also. So this is a page from those guidelines. You see the data inputs at the top and how they feed into the master planning process. Our process in Athens is very similar to this, but this one looks very complicated. So we simplified ours to just the major points, and we used our simplified diagram to help us explain our master planning process to our customers, elected officials, manager, and really anybody else who's interested. This is our simplified process. In Athens, we started the service delivery plan, which is what we call our capital improvements plan. We started it because it was required under the Unification Charter in 1992, and that is when the city of Athens unified with Clark County to become Athens-Clark County. It has been an extremely valuable tool in getting our work done. It's a 20-year plan that's updated every 5 years, and every 5 years when the mayor and commission accept the plan, they also accept 6 years of rate changes that support the plan. And although every year along with the budget, they have to approve these rate changes, so they approve them annually, there are no surprises and they tend to go pretty smoothly. Our broad overall process is pretty simple. In every update, we review our goals and objectives for water and wastewater service. In the infrastructure element, we assess the existing water and wastewater system and identify a list of projects to help us reach our goals. And then in the capital improvements element, we prioritize the projects, and then in the financial element, that's when we actually schedule them over the next 20 years. I'm going to focus on performance measures for a moment. We use them for so many things, I think it's important to highlight them. They provide us with the detailed goals for each of our services. Let me explain. This, excuse me, this is our utility staff commitment statement. It guides our performance measures in everything we do. I'm going to read it. It's not my style to read a slide, but bear with me, it will make sense in a minute. Our staff is committed to providing safe drinking water for public health, fire protection and economic productivity, and safely convey and reclaim wastewater in an environmentally responsive way. We run an effective and reliable enterprise, responsibly reinvesting in public health and environmental protection infrastructure at a value to our ratepayers. Let's break it down. A mission statement is meaningless if you can't use it to help manage your utility. Here we show ours broken down into goals, which helps us determine what framework to make it easy to explain what we were doing and why we are doing it. Our Public Utilities Department track performance measures and report them to the county manager annually, and we use these measures to prioritize projects. For example, this is what falls under the commitment responsibly investing in public health and environmental protection infrastructure. Our goal is to invest or reinvest enough in rehab and replacement of our sanitary sewers, and this is the example, so we keep up with aging infrastructure issues. To help determine how much we should be investing, we looked to the American Water Works Association and the Water Environment Federation median of 1.5%, and that's average for other utilities throughout the United States. And of course, in Athens, we want to be better than average, so we're shooting to spend more than 1.5%. So this is a master plan, and one of our goals is actually to spend more money than other people, but it makes sense. Reinvestment is a major driver of our 2020 service delivery plan, and it accounts for more than 65% of our capital improvements costs. And we have performance measures for every one of our commitments. Curious, so let's do a poll. Does your organization track benchmarks or performance measures? Yes, no, or I don't know.
And while we're pulling up that poll, I want to encourage folks to not choose the easy, I don't know. Try to think about it for a second.
I don't know.
All right, some answers are coming in. We've got 56% saying yes so far,
Good.
32% no, and then 12% saying I don't know. So pretty good.
Yeah, that's real good. I'm pleased to know that you all are, that more than half of you are tracking performance measures. And if you're interested in performance measures or finding additional resources, if you are benchmarking, this book can help you. If you aren't benchmarking, this book can help you. It is a tool to set goals and track progress. It's a manual from the American Water Works Association, and it's a survey of hundreds of utilities throughout the country with a long list of benchmarks that can be tracked. And we used it to get started in our benchmarking effort, and you guys might find it useful too. It's available on the American Water Works Association website. All right, goals and strategies. These are the broad stated goals in the service delivery plan and provide the broad strategic direction and the staff commitments that I already shared with you are the detailed goals tied directly to performance. These are the big picture goals that apply to the master plan, and we share with the Mayor and Commission. In fact, they help develop them. Anyway, they are to comply with the Unification Charter that requires us to have a plan, and to develop a plan that supports water and wastewater reliability and fire protection needs as determined by the comprehensive plan, and our expansions and extensions of service support the county's future development map. We recognize that infrastructure influences long-term development patterns, and we provide water and wastewater services using designs that protect or improve water quality to protect public investments such as conservation and recreational green spaces. We avoid impacts to environmentally sensitive areas like wetlands, buffers, and floodplains. And the plan supports existing watershed protection programs with the intent to maintain or improve water quality standards. This is especially salient when we project sewer capacity. It relates to what I said about the comprehensive plan. The idea is to holistically integrate watershed protection with land use and density in our sewer sheds. And finally, the plan aligns with our Mayor and Commission strategic commitments and goals. 3 of them in particular: improving water supply, resiliency, and reliability, aiming for 100% clean and renewable energy, and managing environmentally damaging septic tanks. All right, now that we've reviewed the goals of the plan, it's time to share the infrastructure element. This slide shows a variety of studies and plans that we use to inform the infrastructure element. We also rely on our staff to identify improvements that they see out in the field, because they're really the experts on our system. And other studies helped inform this as well. For example, we did an economic analysis of water supply shortages, and that helped demonstrate the need for additional long-term water supplies and demand management programs. But these studies on this slide are the ones that help size the pipes and define the engineering needs and types of facilities that address all of our current and future needs. And the purpose of doing these studies is to ensure that the plan considers all of our assets and anticipated future asset conditions, and that it includes programs to address causes of system failures. Chris is going to talk in more detail about projections, so I'm not going to go into details of how we do our projections, but I would like to share how collaborating with other departments can really help. Maintaining relationships with other organizations within your government or other organizations can really help. A really good example for us is how the planning department helped us develop population projections and place them into individual watersheds. They did this for us for the first time as part of the 2015 update, and they continue to help us now. It's a great example of how important it is to maintain communications with the planning department and various departments. And what they do is they let us know about changes in population projections, land use, major industries that could affect water shortages, that could affect water usage more than we know. Once we have the projections at the watershed level, we can translate them into water and wastewater demand growth areas. Working with the planning department helps us make sure our projections are consistent with other public efforts. Now, I plugged this slide in to remind us that we're still talking about the infrastructure element. As a reminder, this is where we actually choose the projects in the plan. These are some of the projects that we identified. Since it's a 20-year plan that is updated every 5 years, some of these were also in the 2010 and 2015 updates. The project lists and costs are updated every 5 years. The next step is to prioritize all of the projects that were identified in the infrastructure element. We do that in what we call our capital improvements element. The infrastructure element identified 59 projects totaling $400 million. These projects will be scheduled using a 20-year fiscal pro forma later this year, but first we prioritize them in the capital improvements element. These are the categories we use. Years ago, these categories were approved by our Mayor and Commission, and they are reviewed every 5 years to make sure they're still relevant. This year, we changed some of them, so they make more sense now. Anyway, Category 1 includes some significant upgrades to our wastewater treatment process to address upcoming regulatory changes. Category 4 includes system expansion projects, several of which are for drought resilience. Category 6, it relates to the 2 overarching goals of Athens-Clarke County, which is better customer service and green energy initiatives. The largest category is number 3, rehab and replacement. It makes up about 2/3 of the total service delivery plan budget. I'm not going to go through all of this in detail, but I will show you the list of first priority projects. This is priority 1, regulatory requirements. The total for these projects total more than $32 million. They include new filters at all 3 of our water reclamation facilities and work to address upcoming more strict drinking water regulations. And we've organized all 59 projects in this way. Here we see all the project costs broken down by priority. As I said earlier, the largest category is rehab and replacement. $264 million is a lot of money, but R&R is one of the most responsible things we can do. Think of it this way. We have about 1,300 miles of pipes, 64 million gallons per day treatment capacity. These pipes and plants have a replacement value of more than $1.5 billion. Most of these assets have a 50 to 100 year useful life, If you divide 1.5 billion by 100 years, that suggests that we should be reinvesting $15 million per year to keep those assets in good condition. So one way to benchmark the 264 million for R&R is multiplying that 15 million per year times 20 years. We're close to it where we ought to be with that benchmark, but we could actually probably spend a little bit more. The last thing I'd like to talk about is public outreach. The GAWP Master Planning Guidelines suggest that public participation is important. And I know it's not something many of us water professionals are comfortable with, but it really is something we all should be doing. Our Mayor and Commission approved this $400 million plan because our community helped create it. We did more than just put it out for public review. We actively sought input. We had planned several public open houses to collect public input, but the COVID pandemic we couldn't meet in public out in person for this, so we took it online. We created videos and encouraged people to view the videos and look through the plan. We had a hotline where if somebody had questions or issues or concerns, they could call and leave a message and we'd reply. We put it on social media. We used all the media outlets that we have in Athens, and it culminated, they had 2 or 3 weeks to do that, and then it culminated in a live panel discussion with our director, our engineer, a couple of our engineers, our environmental engineer and myself, where people could chat questions in. And then if we didn't have any live chat questions, we addressed the ones from the hotline. And it worked, it went quite well. And the interesting thing is we didn't just pay it lip service. We got feedback. And I mean, we got negative feedback about the plan. So you know what we did? We adjusted our plan. Your stakeholders, you're there to serve your customers. And that's what we did, and we did that with our master plan. And there's a photo on that slide that's up there to remind me to tell you that public outreach is not a one and done process. Every community has opportunities for you to go out and communicate the value of water and wastewater infrastructure. Get out there, go to the meetings, and tell them what you do and what your issues are. This photo is from last year, and it's from Envision Athens, which is the public involvement side of a lot of different planning efforts in Athens. We went and we talked to people about water and wastewater and drought and floods. And you know what? Water resiliency became part of a lot of different plans. So stakeholder involvement is really more important than ever. The next step is our financial element. We know what we need to do. How do we pay for it? We use the financial model for scheduling the projects over the next 20 years. Chris is going to talk about financial sustainability in his presentation, so I'm not going to talk about it. Instead, I'll just say that the 20-year pro forma is a financial model that guides when our projects are scheduled and helps us to make financing decisions and rate making. Where are we in the process now? The financial model is underway. We have added a rate study and a cost of service analysis this year, and the Mayor and Commission should be voting on it at the end of the year. And the financial model and performance measures are updated annually as part of our budgeting process, which brings us back to the performance measures that I like so much. And we keep them updated regularly and submit them with our budget every year. And you know, the final 2020 service delivery plan hasn't even been fully completed yet, and we're already thinking about what we need to do for the next 5 years as far as planning to make improvements to our system. And okay, so Ansley asked me to share some tips for small utilities, and here are the top 3 things that I think are important. After showing you that giant sheet with our performance measures, you might have gotten the impression that tracking benchmarks makes life more complicated, but let me assure you it does the opposite. Focusing on a handful of specific measures is a great place to start. Knowing where you've been, where you are, and where you want to go will give you direction. Even if you don't have the resources to do a formal master plan, having benchmarks will give you a direction to aim for. Benchmarks can also be shown to your elected officials to help them understand the need for some of your projects. Over time, you might develop more things to track, but at the beginning, you only need a few. Second, get out there and participate in the planning process. Go to the comprehensive plan public meetings. Talk about the threats to your water and wastewater system. You might just find that addressing water issues becomes one of the goals of your community, and additional resources might be allocated to it. Finally, planning is a process. Developing a fancy document to share with your friends is not the goal of master planning. The goal is to improve efficiency, get projects done, get programs up and running, and be ready for change. The process of doing this never stops, and the focus of your efforts will change as your community changes. I hope you can use these tips. I've really enjoyed putting this presentation together, and I hope it's been helpful to you, and you'll be able to take it with you as you develop your own master plans. You can call me or email me if you have questions. I believe you may already have the slides, but thanks for your time. And with that, I'm going to pass the baton back to Ansley, I guess, or the other moderator. Thank you.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I'll jump in here. This is Stacy. Thank you, Marilyn. Yes, and we will be happy to provide a PDF version of these slides afterwards if you didn't get it already. Yeah, I loved the prepare the umbrella before it rains. That's sound advice, not just for master planning, but in life in general, right? So a couple of questions here for you, Marilyn, before we move on to our next speaker. One of them is, can you share some information on stormwater reuse in Athens-Clarke County?
Stormwater reuse. Well,
yeah. And we could probably save that question from you, Amita, for the stormwater webinar that we have coming up later this month. But just wondering if you had any quick thoughts on stormwater and reuse from a planning perspective by chance.
Well, the University of Georgia has been reusing stormwater, and we have some government facilities, Athens-Clarke County facilities, that are currently reusing stormwater for things like flushing toilets and irrigation. But we don't have any overarching. I'm at the water utility department. Water and wastewater is actually separate from our stormwater department, which I think it'd be great if we were all together, because we are doing reuse, non-potable reuse with the reclaimed water from our wastewater facility. But I don't have any details about the stormwater reuse in Athens.
Okay. Thanks, no worries. Well, we will definitely try to address that too when we have a webinar that's focused later this month on stormwater. Okay, so the next question is, can you give an example of some of the negative comments about your plan that you adjust to responding? Let's see, yeah, I'm gonna paraphrase a little bit on how you adjusted to responding to those concerns.
Yes, we have an ongoing issue in Athens-Clarke County relating to septic systems. And we have a greenway around the county that has septic systems in it. And there's a conflict between environmental issues and the folks who want to protect the greenway, the green space around it, and then folks who live there who want to be connected to the sewer because they have septic tanks that or septic systems that are aging. And we had a project in the service delivery plan to look at septic systems, and we kept it in there. We changed it a little bit, and what we're hoping to do, in fact, later this year, we're going to be presenting to the Mayor and Commission some ideas about septic systems. And it's just that outreach process where we heard more feedback from residents about septic systems and sewer extensions is going to lead to, I mean, it's going to lead to a committee to look at that. And it'll probably be led by a commission member or two, and it'll help guide probably the next round of the master plan as far as sewer extensions goes. That was the biggest conflict. Most all of the comments we had were about sewer extensions and septic systems.
Okay, great. And then the last question here before we move on, what are some of the ways that you have paid for projects on your master plan?
We have been paying as we go for a lot of the vast majority of the projects, but we did have to bond finance the major improvements to our water reclamation facilities, and that was done in 2011. We do have some large projects coming up relating to water resiliency, and we are hoping to leverage our WaterFirst membership to get some GFA money, hopefully. Nudge.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Marilyn. And then on that one too, I will say that there is a one-day online workshop coming up on October 8th, I believe. We'll drop the URL for that in here, but it's going to be focused on how you fund water projects, whether it's water, wastewater, or stormwater projects. So we'll share that information with the folks on this. Well, great. Well, thank you, Marilyn. And I will now switch over to our next speaker, right? So Chris Boyd is with the City of Roswell, and he's been there for approximately 24 years in various departments, including information technology and the water division. He's been in the water industry for approximately 16 years and was hired as the water distribution superintendent in 2006. In 2015, Chris was promoted to the water utility manager position. So Chris has a lot of experience, and we're excited to have him on today. So Chris, take it away. If we can see your camera. That's looking good.
Okay, can you see my screen?
We can. It's sort of in the, we kind of the notes version. So maybe you want to show power. Yeah.
There it goes. All right. Well, thank you. I'd like to thank everyone for joining the call today. My take is going to be a little bit different than that Marilyn gave, and I'm going to talk about what Roswell did when we updated our master plan back in 2016. In fact, we're actually going through our update for 2021, starting a little bit early. I'd be remiss not to talk about, what our utility is and some of the factors we use to consider in the master plan, as well as a lot of the technologies that we were looking at to improve efficiencies on down the road and emerging technologies that are on the horizon. And then talk about some of the accomplishments or the goals that we were able to reach from that 2016 plan and some of our previous plans. We've been doing master planning since I took over in 2006. I've been doing it, and it's a great time to kind of get your wish list out there on type of capital as well as equipment, personnel. Just start jotting down your list, and then as you move into the master plan process, you look to figure out how to fund those particular goals. So in 2016, we opened up our new water treatment plant to replace our old one, which was built back in 1936, and it was a 1.2 MGD water treatment plant at the time. Wasn't enough to meet the full demand of our system. We only serve about 20% of Roswell, the other 80% is Fulton County water. So we had to buy water to meet our demand, and one of the goals was to be a little bit more self-sufficient. So we built a new 3.3 MGD water treatment plant in 2016. It went live. We have a groundwater treatment plant which produces about 1.67 MGD, and it kind of helps us during drought situations to where we don't have to purchase as much from Fulton County at the time. We serve a population of about 18,300 people with a little under 5,600 meter service connections. 89 miles of water lines ranging from 2-inch up to a 16-inch line, which is actually our raw water transmission line. And we have 6 interconnects with Fulton County. In 2009 is when we applied to be a WaterFirst community, and were brought in, and we've been a WaterFirst community ever since. So as I said, in 2015, we began construction on the new treatment plant. One of the things that we wanted to have is a little bit more drought resiliency. So as part of the new plant, we built a 10 million gallon raw water storage tank, which gives us about 3 to 5 days worth of water before we have to start buying water from the county. And hopefully in that time, the stream flows will increase enough to where we can start producing to meet the demand. Our permit is due to be renewed in 2021, so of course we're working on updating the master plan for 2021 to submit to EPD, as well as get approved by our mayor and council first. And our surface water withdrawal comes from Big Creek. So this is just kind of a schematic of the system where we're able to withdraw from Big Creek, goes to our raw water pump station, up to the 10 million gallon storage tank, and then is gravity fed down to our water treatment plant. And from there, the treatment plant sends it out to the distribution system, in which case we have 3 water tanks in the system, storage capacity of 1.075 million gallons. And then we have our well site that we try to operate weekly. Right now it's been down due to lightning hitting the SCADA communication stuff. So we're getting that fixed. And this is just kind of an overall area of what we actually serve in Roswell, which is mainly the southwest quadrant of the city of Roswell, mainly the historic district. As far as customer accounts, this is good to know. 83% of our customers are residential, and then we have a small percentage that are commercial, multifamily, irrigation, so forth and so on. One important note on the customer accounts is roughly 20% of the water consumed is through the multifamily accounts. 44% is through residential, and then our commercial accounts make up the 27%. Right here is a chart of our per capita per day, and this is important to know when you start looking at future demands. It's what's your demand on the system per capita per day. And in 2006, when I was tracking this, it was about 122 gallons per person per day, which was really high. Through conservation efforts, toilet fixture replacements, to more low flow or high efficiency fixtures, we've actually been able to bring it down to about 56 gallons per person per day. One other item, when we launched our AMI system in 2011, we were able to give early notifications to our customers on when they had constant consumption or possible leaks. I never call it a leak, it's always constant consumption. And this leads us into our poll question. How often do you review your master plans?
So far, the answers are coming in. And we have 6%. Well, we're waiting on some more answers. Look like some more answers coming in. All right. So far we have 5% semi-annually, 55% annually, and 40% every 5 years.
That's really good. We review ours semi-annually. I like to see where we are as far as hitting our goals and checking stuff off. And that leads me into, setting your goals for the master plan. One of the things we wanted to do was implement a work order asset management system. In the past, we had been running everything off of paper and Excel and some Access databases, and just wanted to pull everything together into one work order asset management system, to be able to better track what we're doing in the field, as well as performance measures. We want to optimize our water production, of course, reduce our chemical and power costs. This is important because those are probably your higher costs, especially energy costs, in running a water treatment plant. And if you can bring those down, you can invest more in your capital improvement plan on down the road. Reduction of water loss and conservation, that's always going to be a big goal, and it's always going to be ongoing. We wanted to be able to reduce our water loss and conservation by about 2% annually, and I think we've done pretty good. We've replaced a lot of aging water lines that we've had multiple breaks on. We installed our AMI in 2011, and then we launched a customer portal in 2015 where our customers can actually receive alerts of the constant consumption or possible water leak within a 24-hour period, where they can be checking what could be running and get that stopped or addressed rather quickly, instead of waiting until their bill comes in 30 days later and wondering why their bill's so high. And meter testing and replacement, this is ongoing. We replace about 10% of our meters annually. And we try to test anywhere from 300 to 500 meters annually. The goal is 500, but we've been good to hit the 300 mark due to staffing. Replacement of vehicles, equipment. Eventually your vehicles, your equipment's going to age out. You're going to have a lot of issues with repairs and things breaking down. We want to make sure that we have the proper equipment, proper vehicles to make it out to a job site to address a leak or a water quality issue, whatever it could be. Implementing new technologies, leak detection via AMI is one of my goals, to have more permanent loggers out there and use the AMI system to get a snapshot of the system each day, to where we can direct crews to locate and repair leaks. Pressure monitoring is one too, making sure that our pressures aren't spiking. In fact, this year we installed some MNHI hydrant technologies, which allows us to monitor pressure and temperature real time out in the system and get alerts due to hydrant being open for theft, or any major main break that could be going on in the area, to send crews out to investigate and hopefully get addressed quickly. Improve financial sustainability. We want to make sure that we are meeting all of our operating capital needs. The expenses aren't over our revenues coming in, and ensure that we have the proper rates in place to be able to continue funding all the new capital. And we built in right now we have a 4-year annual rate increase of 4%, based on pro forma done through our budget department, and looking at the next 5, 10, and 20 years beyond, to ensure that we've got enough in the bank in case any unforeseen emergencies happen, that we can dip into the reserves. Population growth is one of the factors we used in looking at future demands. And we looked at the 2010 census and broke down the tracts that were within our system and what % of those tracts were within our system, as well as we looked at the Atlanta Regional Commission's forecasting for the next 20, 30 years of population growth, where they were estimating about 2% annually. We also looked at, as I said, the per capita demand. Are we going to have the demand? Is our plant going to be able to produce the demand for the future developments that could be coming in, or future population growth? We also coordinated with our planning and zoning division and our community development department to look at what future projects are coming down the pipeline that would be on Roswell's water system, to ensure that we can meet the demand of that, and if we need to look at replacing lines or adding meters to these locations. System demand goes into that population growth, looking at where we have been historically and calculating what that future demand could look like, and when will we meet capacity of the plant, which we estimate 2030, 2040 is when population growth will be so much that we may need to do plant expansion, in which that'll be put in the plan, as well as if we're going to have to purchase water. Financial analysis, looking at our operation expenses, capital, debt, running a pro forma and the rates. As I mentioned before, the pro forma really helps us out through the capital. I don't know if others do pro formas, but factoring in your budget process, we have to do 5-year budget process, and pro forma helps, but we break it out into a 10 and then a beyond 10 years on what we're looking to spend money on as far as capital, future operations, future staffing, or if we need to contract or hire consultants to do some of the work. And then, of course, your regulatory programs required by EPA, EPD, the Metropolitan District, which include water conservation, leak detection, backflow prevention, hydrant maintenance, valve exercising. And then we also look at the staffing, as I mentioned earlier. You know, currently there are 7 operators at the plant, 5 of which are Class 1 operators. And then we've got 7 crew members in distribution, of which 6 of them are distribution certified and 3 of them are backflow certified. So we want to make sure that we're meeting all the regulatory requirements that are currently in place, and then any future ones coming down the pipeline. For instance, the new lead and copper rule, which EPA is bound to release here in this year, most likely. AMI was implemented in 2001. 2015, we put in AquaHawk, which is our customer portal. We're primarily a census customer, though I have installed some master meter octaves in the system for our 3-inch and larger meters that we've been replacing, as well as we're trying out some camstrup in a few test areas just to see how well they work. They've got a local factory in Roswell, so they're really close by. We utilize ArcGIS for a lot of our stuff, and in fact, in 2010, we launched the Esri Collector app for the crews to use in the field, where they're able to see what assets are in the field that they could be working on, as well as update in GIS real time. And our CMMS was initiated in 2018, which is HyperWeb. For the water modeling, you know, water modeling goes great for looking at future growth and capacity and demands and what you have out there in the lines. One of the things we did is we took the data from our AMI and imported our customer demands into the model and tied to different nodes within the model to get a better calibration on if a new customer or a new development is wanting to move in, can the system in that area meet the fire flow demands and water demands for that new customer. SCADA and telemetry. With the new plant, we implemented a new SCADA system. And then we also went out and started replacing a lot of our telemetry at our remote sites, like our water tanks, our well sites. And we're upgrading from the radio frequency technologies to cellular, which is a more secure and reliable signal back and forth to the plant. The radio signals kept getting stepped on by amateur radio, and we need to make sure that that didn't happen in the future. Leak detection, part of the things we're adding into our plan is utilizing AMI for leak detection and what kind of technologies are out there that could help and budget that into the plan as far as, you know, we're going to be able to do 2% a year or 5% a year of the system, and metering is ongoing. That's your cash register. That's your register. You want to make sure that your meters are registering accurately and you're capturing all flow through them. This is our waterline CIP matrix. We've got roughly 7 criteria. And one of the big things that we have such a high number for is any type of transportation projects going on in an area. Based on the transportation plans, we'll go back and reprioritize our waterline replacement projects based on that. So if transportation is doing a road project on a certain road and we know we need to replace that water line within the next couple of years, we can move it up and get it budgeted for that particular year that transportation's doing their project. We also look at the number of water quality breaks, number of service calls on a particular area, that we can continually go in and update our matrix to reprioritize what projects we have on the pipeline. We do put our top 20 into our master plan, but of course that can change year to year on what you're planning to go out and tackle based on any new priorities that could arise. Annually, we budget about $400,000 a year for line replacements, which is a little bit around 1.5% of our overall budget. Really close to that, which is what AWWA recommends. And if we can do more in a given year, that's great. That's why you need to look at your financial sustainability. You know, how much water line replacement can you do in a year? This just kind of shows all the different main breaks that we've had by material type. And cast iron and galvanized steel have been kind of my nemesis, and we've been replacing a lot of our galvanized steel with HDPE pipe. Many of them are like in the cold stack loops, and we've been able to reduce those number of breaks significantly over the years. So next poll question, how do you update your master plan?
So the answers are coming in. Still got some more time if others want to. Okay. All right. Looks like everyone has submitted who are going to submit. So it's broken down 50-50 down the line, 50% internally by staff and 50% hiring an outside consultant.
Okay, so Roswell, for their 2016 master plan update, we did it internally. And that was a lot of fun. In the past, we've had consultants do it for us, which can be quite costly. But doing it internally gave us a great way to really look at in depth what we wanted to do and how we wanted to go about achieving it. So this slide here talks about a lot of our own ongoing accomplishments from our goals that we had checked. Optimize water production, replace water lines. I mean, these are always going to be ongoing, but we're able to establish financial sustainability as of right now. And then in 2021, when we do our update, we'll be re-looking and using that pro forma to determine, do we need to have another round of rate increases tied into the master plan? So once the city's mayor and council approve it, you know, that's approved in the plan, and we can put that in the budget process each year. And we constantly look at our rates and our budget on a semi-annual and annual basis, just to make sure that we're tracking correctly. So for our power optimization, we installed variable speed drives on all the raw water pumps. And then we also went out to Georgia Power and got the real-time pricing, which really helped to cut our power costs by 50%. That wasn't originally set up when the new plant went online. And for chemical optimization, we've actually cut our chemical costs down by about 40%. A large part of our chemical cost was in permanganate, and we found through jar testing that we were actually overfeeding our permanganate for pre-treatment in the raw water tank. So we've been able to cut that cost significantly, and those cost savings can go towards operations or future capital needs as we move down the road. And this just kind of indicates the purchases that we had to take from Fulton County. You'll see the big spike in 2015. That's when the oil plant shut down. We were buying all our water for our demand from the county. We've actually got our cost down from buying water from the county to less than 1%, and our goal is to keep it under 2% as we move forward through the future fiscal years. So we're achieving that goal. We are tracking that as we move forward. So I'll leave it to if there are any questions.
Great. Thanks very much, Chris. We do have a question/compliment for you. So Kristen is saying that you have really reduced your water usage per capita per day over time. It also appears that you've been really proactive in leak detection and customer usage alerts. And Chris, you might be seeing this in your question chat area too, if it helps you to read it yourself. But so that's the compliment part. The question part is, how does that translate to your water loss percentages or ILI on your annual water audits?
Well, I'd have to go back and look at our 2019. I know on our last water audit, our real losses was really high as opposed to in the past. So that's why we started looking at the pressure monitoring and temperature control devices with the M&H eye hydrant, trying to track where we could have theft, because we know, and I'm sure other utilities are familiar with this, that you have contractors going out and just getting into a little cul-de-sac, not a lot of people, hook up to a hydrant, get what they want and move on. And we're trying to cut our theft down a lot. So having these eye hydrants out there where we can see a big drop in pressure, we know someone could be on that hydrant, or you got a potential leak, main break, and that we're able to roll people out there. Just to kind of give you an idea how the eye hydrant helped us out. And it was in combination with the eye hydrant as well as our SCADA at our water plant. We had a contractor, it wasn't actually a contractor. It was a car hit a fire hydrant on one of our roads. And we got an alert from the eye hydrant saying, hey, you got a drop in pressure. And within 5 minutes, I had the plant calling me, telling me my water tanks are dropping, and I was dispatching guys out there to figure out what was going on. And we found that a car had hit a hydrant and knocked it off the valve. We were able to isolate it pretty quickly, but that was a good early indicator, and we were able to track, when did the break happen and estimate the gallons lost as a result of the leak.
Okay.
I hope that, I mean, our ILI is like around a 1.1 or 1.2 overall.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks for your response there. And, I don't know, for the smaller utilities who may have just recently started doing water loss audits or non-revenue water audits, sometimes as you get better in the process, right, you learn to measure it better, the number looks worse. So just a note not to discourage, especially the smaller systems who might be newer to the audit process. You might not have found all the water loss in the first year or two, so don't be discouraged if the number is starting to look like it's going in the wrong direction. Overall, it'll turn around, generally speaking. Okay, great. Well, I'll ask Marilyn to come back on, if you don't mind, Marilyn, turning your camera on. We have a couple questions that are sort of just general, and either of you may want to chime in, right? So both of you mentioned a couple resources for planning. I know Marilyn mentioned the GAWP, or the Georgia Association of Water Professionals. And then I think, Chris, you mentioned ARC, the Atlanta Regional Commission, or I guess specifically in there, the Metro North Georgia Water Planning District. So did you want to say a little bit more about those resources and how they've helped you, or mention other resources as well?
You want to take this one, Marilyn, to start?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Sure. I have found that the Georgia Association of Water Professionals has really great resources. For example, the Water Loss Committee has a resource on that website specifically for water loss audits and to help people with that. And then if you contact people who are on that committee or the chair of the committee, they'll help you and they'll answer your questions as they come up. I find that the way my brain works is I find it more helpful to actually talk to someone than to go hunt it down in a book or something, because then I can ask them questions as we go. I found that to be really valuable.
I'll agree with you. JWP is a great resource. AWWA is another good one in the Georgia section of AWWA. But reaching out to these different committees, water loss, there's a master planning committee through GAWP that you can reach out, and they'll help you through the process in starting a master plan and helping to evaluate and make sure you've got all the criteria you need.
Great, thank you. And you know, they have regular meetings, usually those two committees that you mentioned, and so you can meet people who are working on some of the same stuff, or better yet, have gone through what you're trying to do right now. Okay, thanks. Looking at our list here, I don't see another question at this point. Oh yeah, there is one for you, Marilyn. You chose the term service delivery plan. We were wondering why. I think the asker is asking, why did you choose to call it that?
I think it goes back to the charter in 1992 when the City of Athens combined with Clark County to unify. The idea was that we would deliver services uniformly throughout the county. And that's actually one of the issues with the sewer extensions, is that everybody within the city had sewer, and part of the unification was that everybody outside the county should get, or the city, the current city, should get sewer also. But as most of you know, that's expensive and impractical. And so I think that's why it was called the service delivery plan, even though it's a capital improvements plan.
Okay, great, thank you. Maryland is blessed to be in an area that has a large university. And I always said that sometimes you get a lot of resources, whether they're solicited or not. And so I know that the terminology, you know, if you think about the term, a drought surcharge, for instance, we had one university student who did a whole focus group exercise on that and found that drought surcharge sounded negative. And you know, customers couldn't get behind that, and so they picked a more positive sounding name. And so that's what this made me think of too. That may not be the case, but Chris, a question for you. Can you talk a little bit more about your interaction with Georgia Power and that real-time pricing? It sounds like you changed to a new rate structure there, maybe?
Yeah, so when the plant was first started up, it was just under their normal rate structure. There was no special real-time pricing. So whatever the price was for the day, we were paying for in power usage. With real-time pricing, we're actually able to see what the cost is per kilowatt hour a day before, so that we can plan when we're going to pump water from the raw water pumps and through the high surface pumps, and when we're not going to be running the pumps. Our raw water and the high surface pumps are our biggest energy consumers, as you may be aware of with water treatment plants. And knowing when the rate's at 12 cents per kilowatt hours and later in the day it's at 55 cents, you're going to want to pump during the cheaper times. And that's what we've had to change the way we operate and meeting our demand. So typically they'll pump at night to refill the tanks and use the tanks to draft during the peak times during the day when the rates are so high, and then turn the pumps back on later on in the day when the rates start dropping. So that's been really key for us. We had to start the conversation with Georgia Power. I want to say we started in July or August of last year. And one of the things they wanted to see before we could even do it, and this is why we couldn't do it when the plant first opened up, they wanted a year's worth of consumptive history on how we were using power at the plant to be able to base the real-time pricing off of, because it has a CBL or baseline rate that they factor in what your cost is going to be. But yeah, like I said, already this year, when we initiated in January of this year, and we've already seen a 50% reduction in our power costs.
Wow, that's great. So just changing the time sometimes that you do sit in operations, right?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Okay, we have a hand raised here. I think Lyndon Green's hand is raised. I'm not sure if we'll be able to unmute you. Even if we do, Lyndon, you'll have to unmute yourself as well. Maybe it might be more efficient to send your comment or your question in the question box here. But we did want to acknowledge that there was one hand raised for a while, actually. Sorry, Lyndon, didn't catch that before. Okay, so we'll look out for his question in the box and see if we can address it before the end of the webinar, or we'll just email you directly, Lyndon, afterwards. Okay, so at this point, I want to thank our speakers again very much for keeping us engaged here. Thanks for your poll questions and for answering these questions on the fly here. And I will pass it back now to Ansley or Oshabar just to wrap us up.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Ansley, I think you're muted.
Thank you.
There we go.
There we go. I was just saying, I really appreciate everybody who's able to join this call, and Oshabar and I really look forward to future conversations with you. We're always open to hearing from communities that are looking to start pursuing the WaterFirst designation. So please reach out to us. Our contact information was provided, with your registration, but there will also be a follow-up email where the materials from today are shared with you. So we'll make sure our contact information is in that as well.
Yeah, and don't let any of this information intimidate you in any way. We want to make sure that we are doing as much technical assistance as possible to help any community that needs it. Even with what Marilyn and Chris presented today, I'm pretty sure they would be willing to help out in any way to get you guys as much information as they have available to help in this process. So we thank you guys for tuning in, and we look forward to you guys being a part of the sessions coming forward.
Great, thank you. So just to reiterate the dates, we did send it in the Q&A box here, but the next webinar will be on September 15th. So we're going to skip next week with the Labor Day holiday. So these are generally on Tuesday mornings in September, except for the Tuesday after Labor Day. So that topic on September 15th will be stormwater. We have some great speakers lined up. Brad Keller, who is a stalwart in the stormwater industry in Georgia. Scott Allison and Charlie with City of Richmond Hill, sorry. On September 22nd, we'll focus on water conservation and education. And then the watershed assessment session will be the last topic on September 29th. So something to note as well, you do not have to have the same staff people in your organization attend all of these. So if you have a stormwater person who doesn't really care anything much about water conservation or education, that person could attend the September 15th one and not necessarily attend any of the others or have attended today. So you can mix it up a little bit. Let's see. Yeah, and you will also see at the end of the webinar here, something should pop up that's asking you to evaluate how things went today and kind of topics you're interested in, and maybe even if you want some direct one-on-one assistance with becoming a WaterFirst designated community. So feel free to please actually provide some feedback there. We're going to subject folks to 3 more of these in this month. So if you can give us some tips, we will be happy to adjust and improve. But thank you all for being a great audience. And yeah, feel free to reach out by email, etc. in the meantime, if you have any questions.